Hi from Takeover TV in Denbigh. I'm Sheila Pillay.
I'm Julie Howatson Broster.
And I'm Michael Hughes. In tonight's show, the secrets of Denbigh's 1950s museum.
A Welsh walkabout around Denbigh.
We'll be hearing people's memories of the North Wales Hospital.
And there's music from Denbigh's very own Lump Heap.
Croeso I Denbigh. Welcome to Denbigh. I'm going to show you around a few of the interesting places in Denbigh and that have a strong connection with the Welsh language and its culture. In 1939, the National Welsh Eisteddfod was held here in Denbigh and again in 2001. I was lucky enough to present the Horn of Plenty to the Archdruid here in the Bardic Circle. Swan Lane Chapel, Capel Lawn Swan, the oldest chapel in Denbigh. There are 8 chapels, 3 churches and 1 Catholic church. Llyfrgell Denbigh, Denbigh Library. I'm going to have a little chat with Gaynor Morgan-Rees, who's a well-known actress on Welsh television.
You see, Eglwys Wen, Capel Mawr, Gwas G.
Gosh, look at that.
Then of course you have the High Street. Howell School, is that?
Beautiful.
And then you end up at the castle. Remember me as you pass by. As you are now, so was I. As I am now, so you will be. Prepare thyself to follow me.
Just you leave it to me.
Twm O'r Nant Theatre, named after a famous Welsh poet, Twm O'r Nant, used to be the Memorial Hall and is now used for plays and other events. The only Welsh school in Denbigh, and also named after Twm O'r Nant. Apparently this is Twm O'r Nant. If you ask me, he looks rather scary and miserable. Many children in Twm O'r Nant actually enjoy singing and competing at the Steddfod, including Steffan. Now girls, if you're looking for a hunky Welsh guy, Club Rugby Denbigh, Denbigh Rugby Club is the place to come. You may not get Gavin Henson, but you'll get a few fit lads. After all that talking and walking, I'm ready for a coffee. And we're better than Denbigh's Welsh Cafe, a pantry. Ten years ago, the North Wales Hospital here in Denbigh closed down. A very sad time for many local people. Some would like houses built on the site, others opposed the idea. So Sheila has been talking to 3 people who, for one reason or another, are fascinated by the hospital.
You can't miss the site of the North Wales Hospital just outside Denbigh. Not so long ago, hundreds of people worked here or came for treatment. But today, it's completely deserted. Jean Collin was treated at the hospital more than 30 times.
I got to be almost more at home at the hospital than I was on the out. I was treated with such kindness. And as my illness escalated and I was only coping outside, less and less time, not one nurse ever said or made me feel like, oh, it's you again. The care I had was second to none.
The main forms of treatment were medication, and that changed considerably over the years. But there was also ECT, which was, well, still is very controversial. That's electroconvulsive therapy. Prior to my being there, many years ago, there were all sorts of weird and wonderful treatments. Back in the 1930s, they used to do things like malarial treatment, where they used to infect a person with malaria to cure them of syphilis. The other treatment was prefrontal leucotomy, where a couple of holes were bored in the skull and some of the nerve fibres were severed in the frontal lobe of the brain. And they actually used to carry out that operation at the hospital up until the mid-1960s.
Rachel Gadsden is an artist who's looking at the ruins of the hospital.
My aim is to go back into the derelict buildings and retrace and find the traces of life that still exist despite the decay. So it's really storytelling, it's a narrative, and the work becomes quite ethereal because it's not a straightforward narrative, because you only get fragments and traces, so you don't get a complete overview, but you get a sense of what the space was about. It's very challenging because what you're trying to find is both the hope as well as the fragility of the society, and I suppose it's a very good space to go into, because as soon as you find fragile people, you start dealing with much more important subject matter. A lot of people recovered who went to the North Wales Hospital. Some people didn't, so you get to see the two aspects of life, and as an artist and dealing with any sort of philosophical debate, you're trying to find the two extremes of dealing with the human condition, and it's all there. It's sort of the hope of life, but also the fragility of life.
So how do you feel now that the hospital's being unused and it's empty?
Well, I think it's a disgrace, to be honest. It is a magnificent building. Even though it was built in 1848, the structure itself is very sound. Unfortunately, it's been very badly vandalised and will cost a lot of money to repair. And I think that a lot of people missed a lot of opportunities when the hospital was closing, especially the county council, who could have taken over the building really to house their offices for the whole county. It could have been used for so many things. Denbigh lost a lot when the hospital closed. Economically, it lost a lot. I mean, there could have been a hotel there, a caravan park, somewhere to regenerate the town, you know, somewhere that would bring people in. There's very few places for people to stay in Denbigh, you know. So I think that we're really have not got a lot of choice about what happens there. It's all dependent on the people that buy it and what profit they want to make out of it, I think.
Welsh and English are not the only languages to be heard here on the streets of Denbigh. Shirley and Julietta are from the Philippines, but they actually live and work here in the town. Now, they're a very long way from their family, so we'd like to find out how they fill their time.
So explain what they're like. My name is Shirley Bien Colvera, and originally I came from Bicol region in Manila, and I have 5 children. So that's why I'm here to, you know, help my husband earn money for their studies.
Just like Shirley, as I applied that one as a care worker in the newspaper, because this says that they need a midwife, a nursing aide, and a nurses with a medical background.
I am the nursing aide. I'm working in a psychiatry here. We arrived here at 24th of January 2003. And we have a contract of 2 years. And then the company decided to renew us for another 3 years.
Philippines is 7,107 islands, and we've got loads of dialects.
Hindi, nilinis sila labas, di ba?
Start at the age of 3 years old. We're being taught already how to speak English. And some families usually speak English at home.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed art thou among women, blessed is
For us in Filipinos, Sunday is a special day for church and the family. So we usually go to church every Sunday.
We decided that we would have celebrate the whole world.
Oh, it's like...
So it started off as a way to welcome people, and then it moved on to let's celebrate all the world.
And this is the Philippines. Philippine national anthems. That's our flag. And this is the Philippine flag. I like this one. Why I chose Denbigh? Because it's near to the countryside and it's near to the village where I really love most. Because I like to play in the green fields. Banana chips from the Philippines. I miss it. Si Romar? Ay, hindi pa. Sus, kalimutan ko. Oo. I miss my family. But if you ask me where I want to just to live right now, I think I want to live here.
It is sad. It is sad that you're apart from your family. I really miss all of them.
Now let's go back 50 years to the decade of the coronation, the first ascent of Everest, and Prime Minister Harold Macmillan. Just outside Denbigh at Kyde Trust, one man's dream has become a reality with the opening of a 1950s museum. Sally Davis went to check out some of the more interesting memorabilia.
Johnny is a joker, he's a bird.
I'd been repairing old cars and I thought I might put a few on show. Then I thought I might put a bit of the history of those times from around them. And then actually that the cars ceased to be the main part of it. And so it became a 50s era memorabilia museum.
On the outskirts of Denbigh, well hidden from view, Robert Harrison, known to all as Sparrow, has a fabulous 50s museum packed with memorabilia from the decade of teddy boys and the rapid growth of time-saving domestic appliances.
This is a teddy boy coffee bar from those days. All these coats were lent to us. They actually belonged to a teddy boy who was killed in a motorbike accident. A genuine jar of Brill cream. Have a smell.
Wow.
It's pretty dire, isn't it? And sometimes I used to show it to old girls, and they'd have a sniff, and they'd go weak at the knees because they'd remember that smell from their sort of first snog in the back of the cinema. This gets more attention than anything in the whole the whole place. This belonged to a great old friend of mine. She bought this in 1948, used it till 2002 when it broke down. She was very angry because a man said he didn't think it was safe.
So you've seen some of Sparrow's 50s memorabilia. Now take a look at this. Used in the 1963 Great Train Robbery, this truck helped the gang make away with £2.3 million. That's the equivalent of over 40 million today. Painted green to appear as an army vehicle, it also has a false floor in the back to conceal some of the loot. The latest project is the small shop that used to stand beside the fire station in Denbigh.
The plan is it'll be part of the actual museum, which means that we will make it into a 50s shop with 50s signs and 50s products in there, turn it back into what it was. And we're just trying to find anything from those days. If there's anybody watching who's got anything from those days that we could have to put in the shop, we would be very pleased.
Wales is famous for its castles, and we've got our very own here in Denbigh. Now, it may not be as famous as Carnarvon or Harlech, but we love it, and it's probably our most famous landmark. Trevor is the castle warden, and he's here to tell us more.
The castle at Denbigh was built as a military fortress. It was a very, very important castle. It was built by a man called Henry de Lacy on behalf of King Edward I in 1282 as more of a backup for the other castles which were coastal, to protect King Edward's new lands from outside threats from Ireland and France. The area of Rufyniog here was ruled by Llywelyn ap Gruffydd. Now Llywelyn refused to pay allegiance to King Edward I after a fallout, and this resulted in David campaigning with Edward I to conspire against his brother. In 1282 was King Edward's second campaign, which resulted in the death of Llywelyn in a lone ambush, and later, after a month's siege at his fortress here, David was captured, taken away to the Tower of London, and he was hung, drawn and quartered. It wasn't the Welsh people that were actually living in these towns. It was English persons brought over. The Welsh people would be allowed through the gates to trade with these people, get to know these people, and get to eventually, when things settle, after a couple of hundred years, they would get to trust these people, get to know them, intermingle, and interbreed. If you actually tried to break into the castle, you'd have to break through that door. And as soon as you started banging and kicking that door, the soldiers up on top would drop big rocks down on you. Your soldiers would come through. Here, we would hit a doorway. We'd have an oak door. Above my head, here, we have a murder hole. And another one further back. So in the event you were the enemy and you discovered this, you tried to break through the door, you would be attacked with the use of large rocks or long pikes, or even the old traditional boiling oil. In 1294, the castle was actually taken by a man called Madog ap Llywelyn from Anglesey as part of a Welsh campaign. The only time the castle was ever taken by force, and it had to be a Welshman.
So what's it like to live here in Denbigh with a disability? Two people who should know are Elaine and Mike. So let's hear what they think.
It's very difficult to access all the shops and all the buildings because there are very few things in Braille apart from the co-op, and there are no guide rails or anything like that to guide me round. So I have to always ask for help and stand and wait until somebody, you know, notices that there's a man with a guide dog waiting there, and he's not waiting for his wife.
We're looking at one of Denbigh's 2 public telephone boxes. It's totally inaccessible to anyone with a disability, i.e. a wheelchair user or someone that's blind, like my friend Mike. We just couldn't get to it.
With sight issues, you have to learn every bump in the pavement, every corner and every post that there is there. Being a medieval town, the streets were not made for modern traffic and modern man. So it is very difficult. And if you get off the main street at all, you've got narrow little side streets and uneven borders. You know, some buildings stick out, some don't. So the pavement width can be anything from 2 feet to 2 meters.
On the whole, in the community, like in the town itself, it's much worse than other environments I've been in. As with most services for people with disabilities in Denbighshire, transport is an issue, really. But there are positives. There are people that are trying to make a difference. We've got a Dial a Ride, which is subsidised by the county council, and it will help disabled people who can't get out of their own home, you know, to reach public transport. Another good incentive is Chris, a local taxi driver, has bought this cool little car that's, you know, fully accessible and for people with sight impairments as well as physical disability. So there are options, just not enough of them.
There are 33,000 disabled people in the Denbighshire area, concentrated mainly between Rhyl, Prestatyn and Denbigh. And the businesses in those areas have done very little at all to make their premises accessible to either people with guide dogs with sight problems or to people in wheelchairs. Good girl, come on. That's it, good girl, good girl. Right, good girl, come on, find the counter. Find the counter, find the counter. Clever girl, that's it. This is the Halifax. And here's the counter, which, as you see, has a lowered section in the middle, so that if anybody comes in, even with a wheelchair, they can gain access to the tellers behind the counter. Oh dear. They're not paying me for this, you know. The Disability Discrimination Act says that businesses should make reasonable adjustments. We don't want them to tear the buildings down and rebuild them, especially for us, but just to make reasonable adjustments so that we can get into them and spend our money in them.
Hi, my name's Robin and I'm a pupil here at Ysgol Glenfloyd in St Asaph, just outside Denbigh. Glenfloyd is the oldest bilingual school in this area of North Wales, but although it does have a rich and proud history, it has recently been modernised for the new millennium. There are over 850 pupils here at Glenfloyd. It is already taking advantage of a £380,000 theatre that has been built inside the school, but it's not just the staff and pupils of the school that will benefit from it. This is a quick look at how normal people put their heads together in order to better their day-to-day lives. This is the story of Ysgol Glenfloyd. Hello, miss.
Hello, Robin.
What made you decide that the school's facilities needed upgrading?
Well, I don't think it was me that decided. I think it was pretty obvious to everybody that they needed to be upgraded. In particular, the theatre, which was built 30 years ago and hasn't had any money spent on it since.
So, what exactly is the school going to gain from having this new theatre? Is it going to gain much?
Well, the intention really is that the school and the community both gain from it. The school's going to gain from it because we've got better facilities now for teaching drama and music. And obviously when we have our school productions on, we've got a much better place for the public to come and see us. But the community also can come in now. We've got shows at night, touring companies come. So there's a lot going on, really.
And have you any regrets at all about redoing the theatre at all?
Well, it was a very emotional time last summer when we actually had our last event in the theatre as it was, in the old orange chairs. It all went to the skip. So it was quite emotional, but I think now that it's all finished and looking smart, nobody's going to look back.
And so, from one of the best bilingual secondary high schools in this area of North Wales, no, wait, the whole world, I think you'll agree that the best has just gotten better.
Denbigh's music scene is booming. There are some really cool bands. So let's find out a little bit more from our reporter, Cass.
Okay, and joining me now today is Sam from Lump Heap. Hello.
Hello.
How long have you and the Lump Heap boys been together for?
We've been together for about 3 months now, and we've been playing as a band since January, really.
Do you write all your songs together?
We do write some of the songs together, but we all write separately. We've been writing for about a year, 2 years now, sort of thing.
Do you enjoy playing in Denbigh? Have you played a gig here before?
We've played like acoustic nights and stuff around the area, sort of thing. But there's more like nights opening up in Denbigh now, so it's getting easier, but we've tended not to play in Denbigh at the moment.
So you're definitely serious about the music business then?
I wouldn't say I was serious about the music business, no, I just like playing music.
And what are you going to be playing for us today?
I'm going to play a track, or we're going to play a track called Life is Bliss.
Okay, thanks very much. Sam from Lump Heap.
Why can't each day be like this? Oh, why can't each day be like this? Oh, why can't each day be like this?
That's all we've got time for tonight.
Thanks very much for watching.
Hwyl fawr.